The Bogosity Podcast, early and ad-free. Become a subscriber at Patreon, Subscribestar, or Discord. Use the links at donate.bogosity.tv.
Welcome to the Bogosity Podcast for the week of October 20, 2024. The podcast that shares quantum states with fermions. This is your host, Shane Killian. Let's citify the news of the bogus. More on the censorship front, this time in Maricopa County, Arizona, where it turns out the county recorder, Stephen Richer, enlisted a foreign censorship group to stifle speech his government didn't approve of. The States United Democracy Center is a leftist election organization formed by Norman Eisen, Obama's so-called ethics czar. They've been bankrolled by the State Department to target election speech that the government doesn't like. States United has praised the weaponization of the DOJ against Trump and was described by the New York Times as part of a coalition that was taking extraordinary preemptive actions, and that, quote, the planning underway to push back against a potential second Trump administration are without precedent. Richer sent an email of thanks to States United for letting him piggyback on their anti-speech operations, including what he termed deep scanning the internet for disinformation. They set up a call between him and the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, a London-based group that's been accused of wrongfully labeling various views as misinformation and using that mislabel to censor opinions online. He used this to push for the firing of Arizona State University faculty associate Aaron Ludwig. In June of 2022, his office set up a briefing with them, which linked to an ISD page that said in part, quote, in preparation for the 2022 U.S. midterms, ISD's expanded U.S. team partnered with States United, among others, to detect, analyze, and escalate threats to the democratic process, election officials, voters, and candidates. ISD's election work resulted in influential outputs on election denialist activity and the presence of election disinformation on short-form video platforms. That page also links to news clips of ISD members praising their own efforts to pressure big tech into censoring online speech. So on 31 July, Richer emailed Arizona State to tell them to fire Ludwig for his online speech. He wrote, he is a regular purveyor of election disinformation and misinformation, but I am writing today because he is currently actively promoting message that encourage harassment of and violence toward two non-public facing employees of the Maricopa County Elections Department. In the words he has promoted, those two employees should be made famous and lock them up. Yeah, those are supposed to be threats, apparently. Quote, the allegations are, of course, errant nonsense that only imbecilic troglodytes could possibly believe after 5 minutes of research. Oh my God, doesn't that remind you of every single other trolling woo on the internet? Quote, the incitement to harassment and violence, which has affected both employees already, is especially rich for somebody who is a member of the state bar and purports to be an expert in criminal justice. Please let me know if you need any additional information from me. Please let me know what you decide. I will also be filing a complaint with the Arizona State Bar against Mr. Ludwig. The post in question wasn't even a post of Ludwig's, but a retweet. The original tweet was from Gail Golick, a candidate for county supervisor, which read, it's time to make Redacted and Christy Passarelli famous. Redacted, who does not have security clearance, used Christie's badge multiple times. He proceeded to delete election files in Maricopa County. They both still work there. Hashtag lock them up at General Bernovich. ASU Dean Cynthia Leitz emailed Richard saying, quote, thank you for this important information. We will look into this. Bo Dull of States United also emailed Richer but the entire content of the email was redacted. Months later, Richer was still at it. He followed up the next February and was told it was addressed. But that apparently didn't mean telling Ludwig about it, because he didn't know anything about it until April, when it was found in a public records request. Ludwig, who worked for the AG's office from 2011 to 2014 and was a special prosecutor until 2015, said, quote, "I led Arizona's charge against organized crime and the southern border, the transnational criminal organizations, including all the drug cartels. For somebody to attack my background and credentials and professionalism and integrity and accuse me of being some filthy liar or anything is so offensive. It's destructive to my reputation. I believe it's defamatory per se." Richer campaigned on election integrity, but when in office, he kept defending the very suspicious 2020 election in Maricopa County, wrote op-eds for CNN opposing election audits, lambasted the public for election integrity concerns, and even attacked proponents for ranked choice voting and other election reforms as disastrous for voter confidence. He even wrote in a speech, quote, "The Constitution today is in some ways a thorn in the side of my office, specifically the First Amendment." Wow. Just wow. Do you want to live in a country where government agents email your employers to try and get you fired because they don't like what you said on the internet? For that matter, do you want government agents who call the First Amendment a thorn in their side and push to have opposing speech censored? Because that's the country we're rapidly approaching if things don't change soon.
Sometimes you just have to stomp some skulls. From the mind of Mr. Dapperton, a game for the ages. In a world where a race of undead furries tries to take over the world's nuclear arsenal, one man must stop them. But which man? You choose. Dapperton, Elon,
not my Doge coins,
Joe,
build me back,
Shapiro,
my kippa's ruined,
or Don John.
Ow, my ear.
Forget those losers. You know you want to play as me, Lord Killian. That's right. You can stomp the skulls of those commie furries and save the universe as me.
7 complete different worlds with more coming all the time. Full controller support. You can even get eaten by a worm and pooped out into a furry cathedral. You know you want this game. Go to links.bogosity.tv/skullstompers and play Skull Stompers now.
And now let's go to another state where we've been following massive corruption, Georgia and Fulton County DA Fani Willis. We've covered only some of the massive corruption of the Young Thug trial, which included an illegal ex parte meeting between a member of Fani's office and the judge, where they pressured their star witness, Lil Woody, to give the testimony they wanted him to. That corrupt judge, Ural Granville, is off the case, and in his place is Judge Paige Reese Whitaker, who, to say the least, is not happy with Fani right now. It has to deal with more ex parte communications, which began with an individual in Germany who sent a lengthy email to Fani's office heavily criticizing prosecutor Adrienne Love, and he CC'd others, including the judge. The individual, whose name has been redacted, wrote, "I have been watching your behavior for quite some time now, and I am wondering, how can you be so bad at your job after all these years of experience? The new judge, who was trying to help you, not as much as Ural did, initially, is fed up with you finally. You are ruining your career and what is left of the reputation of the Fulton County DA's office. Please just rest this case, or you will get into so much more trouble. Maybe you are going to lose your job and will have issues in finding a new one because your unprofessional behavior and your haphazard and unorganized ways of working are on display for everyone to see. Please just do the right thing. You are going to lose the case anyway because you lost the jury about 6 months ago already. And what is eventually going to come out is that young thug is innocent anyway. He is not fucking Pablo Escobar, but you are acting like it. Just stop it, please, Miss Love. So Willis took it upon herself to respond to the email, giving encouragement to Love and CCing the judge as well. Quote, Ms. Love, please ignore this foolishness. As you know, the elected district attorney is extremely proud of you and believes you to be a huge asset to this office and our community. You have no chance of losing your job, and your service is greatly appreciated. Folks who have never tried cases will always have nasty things to say, but while they criticize from the sidelines, they fear the arena. They are not risking life and limb to keep our community safe. Let me tell you an anecdote of encouragement this morning. A good friend of mine called this weekend and said she was in an Uber, and the Uber driver randomly began talking about being from Memphis and how much violence there was in Memphis. She said the Uber driver said in Memphis they do not have the ability to do RICO. That's not true, by the way. Tennessee has RICO laws. Tennessee Code Section 39-12-201. Anyway, quote, he said, I am so proud of our DA here in Atlanta and her YSL team. They are not afraid and they are fighting for justice. I tell you this random anecdote to encourage you to brush your shoulders off and keep your eye on the prize, which will always be justice. Please know that your boss gets 100 nasty messages and 100 nice messages a day. I focus on one thing every day, representing my community in a way that is fair. I am asking of you to continue to focus on justice and ignore the haters. I am extremely proud of you. Now go make it an amazing day. Yours in service, Fani T. Willis, she, her. Douglas Weinstein, attorney for defendant Demont Yak Gotti Kendrick, was not having it. He likened it to a campaign ad, and the judge didn't like it either.
I just don't believe it was appropriate, and I would just ask you to please ask the state to halt any future communications ex parte they might want to have with this court. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah, it's a shame that the court would even have to say something like that. But can you all please communicate to everybody in the DA's office to not have any sort of ex parte communications with the court?
So about the only way Fani's office could make this worse is if they pushed back against it. So, of course, that's exactly what Deputy DA Simone Hilton did.
I think we have a different perception of direct communication with the court, but we will make sure that... But the court was
copied on it.
I take issue with any type of suggestion that this was not a direct communication with the court. It went from Madam DA Fani Willis to this court. It was a direct communication to this court. It was inappropriate. It was praising Georgia's RICO statutes to the court, which, again, was not appropriate, Your Honor.
The elected DA, Ms. Willis, made a decision to respond and directed that response to Ms. Love, but kept everybody, including the person who had made the original email communication and the court, on her response to Ms. Love. And I believe that to be ex parte, and that is the reason why as soon as I read it, I had Ms. Persifield forward it to all counsel, because I don't think that should be going on.
She also ordered that the email be made an exhibit. This is something even the most fresh-faced member of the bar should know. You do not engage in ex parte communications with the judge. And especially this office, especially in this case, shortly after a major scandal where exactly that sort of thing happened? Inexcusable. If you're on the Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or hotel, anyone on that network can get your traffic. Do you really trust all of those strangers? For that matter, do you really trust your ISP? A VPN can protect you from prying eyes, disguise your location, and even foil government censors. It's essential in this day and age, so go to vpn.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to BoxPN. Starting at just $2.99 a month, you can get unlimited high-speed connections to VPN servers all over the world, and they don't log connections, so your privacy is assured. Traveling abroad, just VPN home, and don't worry about what those other governments are doing. Back at home, stop your ISP from traffic shaping and messing with the quality internet access you're paying good money for. You can connect from multiple machines at once, including your smartphone or tablet, and it supports all the secure standards, including OpenVPN and SSTP. Bypass censors and surveillance with your own secure VPN connection. Go to vpn.bogosity.tv. All right, moving to federal corruption now. Going back to the J6 committee and one of the several bits of outright perjury that's been proven since that occurred. This one about Cassidy Hutchinson's laughable claims, including that Donald Trump grabbed a Secret Service guy by the clavicle. The testimony we all heard in the J6 committee hearing was that Trump had ordered the driver of the beast, lead Secret Service agent Robert Engel, to turn around and go to the Capitol. And when he refused, Trump reached over the seat and tried to grab the wheel and grabbed the driver by the clavicle. Several problems immediately apparent to anyone with a functioning brain, not the least of which is the Secret Service worked for Trump and had to follow his orders. Disobeying would have been insubordination, an offense punishable by court-martial. And what do you really think would happen if the president or anyone else attacked a Secret Service member? Wouldn't work out well for them. The biggest one, of course, is that this was complete hearsay. Hutchinson wasn't even in the car and claimed to have heard it from White House Deputy Chief of Staff Tony Ornato. The problem is, as we covered in the past, Ornato said no such thing, and even said that it never happened, as did Engel. The story is complete fiction, and Hutchinson lied directly to the committee under oath. That's also the case with the Hang Mike Pence testimony, the claim that Trump didn't care that the protesters were armed, and basically the rest of what she said as well. The Committee on House Administration's Subcommittee on Oversight looked into things and found that Hutchinson had been deposed by the committee twice with no such clavicle story or any of the rest. On the third time, she had a secret deposition with Liz Cheney without Hutchinson's lawyer Stefan Pasentino present. That would have been bad enough, but it turns out Liz Cheney worked through an intermediary, Alyssa Farah Griffin, to violate the Sixth Amendment and get Hutchinson talking without Pasentino present, but with hand-picked lawyers of her own. The subcommittee obtained screenshots of the conversation from Hutchinson's phone, which was made through the secure messaging app Signal. Griffin texted to her, "So I reached out to Liz. She agreed to keep our convo totally confidential. She said she admires you and could tell that you wanted to do the right thing from your testimony. Her one concern was so long as you have counsel, she can't really ethically talk to you without him. But what she suggests is a follow-up with you with your lawyer that she and Dan George can lead." Do you get what this means? Not only was Liz trying to make this happen, but she knew it was unethical, and she was actively trying to hide it. That's mens rea, people. For a month, Griffin acted as an intermediary, giving deniability to Cheney. They talked about the optics of her leaking her new fake story to the press instead of directly to the committee, and to create a fake reason for her to do a third interview to feed to Pasentino, all ultimately at Cheney's direction. The subcommittee found, quote, Hutchinson testified to a series of uncorroborated and unverified stories that conveniently fit the Select Committee's narrative that President Trump is dangerous and solely responsible for the events of January 6. Despite already testifying to the Select Committee twice, Hutchinson never previously mentioned this new information. After her third transcribed interview, Hutchinson reached out to Cheney directly. When Hutchinson texted Cheney, she was still represented by Pasentino, which Cheney knew. Cheney and Hutchinson communicated directly for days without Pasentino's knowledge. Subsequently, Cheney provided Hutchinson with new attorneys from Alston and Byrd, pro bono. Yes, it was Cheney's lawyers who were provided to Hutchinson for the interview, with no charge to Hutchinson herself. They have the direct signal messages between Hutchinson and Cheney setting up the interview and even making secure signal calls. So Hutchinson fired Pasentino and hired Cheney's handpicked lawyers. And that wasn't all. There was also a fourth transcribed interview where only Cheney and one other committee counsel were present, in addition to Hutchinson and her new counsel. Quote, the subcommittee was only able to obtain a limited number of text messages from Hutchinson and Farrah Griffin, but Cheney's influence on Hutchinson is apparent from that point forward by her dramatic change in testimony and eventual claims against President Trump using second- and third-hand accounts. In Cheney's book, she said she didn't want the committee advising Hutchinson on what to do next. Quote, I told Cassidy that she could consult another lawyer and seek his or her independent advice on how best to move forward. Every witness deserves an attorney who will represent their interests exclusively. Ultimately, Cassidy decided to retain 2 new lawyers, both with prior experience in the Justice Department. One had been appointed a few years earlier by President Trump to oversee the Justice Department's Civil Division. The other had served as justice during the George W. Bush administration. Wait, under George W. Bush? In other words, the administration where her daddy was vice president? Jeez. Hutchinson's book gave more details, but only said that Cheney advised her to change attorneys and gave a list of recommendations. Yeah, it seems like that list was just members of that one firm. The subcommittee found, it is apparent that Cheney knowingly communicated with Hutchinson without Hutchinson's attorney's knowledge, and by doing so finally revealed the flawed process and alleged findings of the Select Committee. Cheney had an ethical responsibility to only communicate with Hutchinson with her attorney present. However, Hutchinson's sensational testimony was essential to the Select Committee's inquisition of President Trump. Thus, Cheney apparently defied her ethical responsibilities and communicated directly with Hutchinson behind Pasantino's back, encouraged her to fire Pasantino, and even assisted Hutchinson in obtaining new representation. So now, they only needed to fabricate a story to make Pasantino a scapegoat, including the allegation that he was the one who told her to lie. Quote, they manufactured the story that Pasantino gave Hutchinson faulty advice, such as instructing Hutchinson to withhold information, to misrepresent her testimony, and even that Pasantino implied he would help Hutchinson with employment in return for favorable testimony. Contrary to the Select Committee's and Hutchinson's narrative, however, the subcommittee obtained messages between Farrah Griffin and Hutchinson where Hutchinson admits that Pasantino was acting in her best interests and that she agreed with his counsel. The subcommittee has reviewed relevant documents revealing that both bar complaints filed against Pasantino in Washington, D.C. and Georgia were dismissed without imposing any penalties against Pasantino. Instead of Cheney facing scrutiny for unethically communicating with Hutchinson behind the back of her legal representation, Cheney used the weight of the Select Committee to pressure the D.C. bar to investigate her star witness's scapegoat. This was all to make Hutchinson seem credible while destroying the credibility of any dissenting voice, and that meant attacking the career of anyone who stood in the way of the Select Committee's narrative. And they bring the receipts. Griffin texted to Hutchinson. That was definitely at Liz's direction. How do you feel about just doing it with Stefan but answering more questions? You can handle yourself, and he's just there as a figurehead. She replied, and basically give ultimatum of, we'll come back, but we need assurance she won't be called in live, which I don't think they'll give, or, if you won't give us an assurance, reissue a subpoena. He's not against me complying. He's actually sort of willing to do it because he thinks it builds my credibility as a witness. But he wants just enough from the committee to balance out the public backlash from the lawsuit and to frame me as super compliant / respectful of congressional subpoenas. He's going to call Dan George this afternoon. Can you tip off Liz or Dan? Griffin texted back, I actually agree with Stefan's approach and think it's accomplished everyone's goals. I am happy to tip Liz off. And for what it's worth, I don't think you are close to front in line to testify live, but it might be worth asking for the commitment. My guess is Stefan cares about protecting Trump. Your issues were more with Meadows and folks around him, and you were simply being honest. Hutchinson replied, exactly. He doesn't want me to stonewall the committee now over this. I think he wants to balance the perception in Trump world if I just go back voluntarily versus under subpoena. Liz Cheney was severely violating ethics rules and perhaps even the law, and she knew it. She knew she was suborning perjury and violating the Sixth Amendment. Lawyers have been disbarred for much less. I mean, don't expect it or anything, because the DC bar is as corrupt as she is. It goes right back to the ex parte issues we covered in the last segment. Cheney was talking with Hutchinson about this while Pasantino was still her lawyer. And now, Hutchinson, Griffin, and Cheney are all campaigning in support of Harris. Tell me, who's the threat to democracy here? Do you have children, or nieces or nephews? Are you homeschooling, or just want to counter some of the socialist indoctrination most children get in school? If so, go to Bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins, and you'll be taken to a website where you can get some great books for elementary-age children. The Tuttle Twins books are books about liberty and free market economics that include children's versions of Bastiat's The Law, Leonard Read's I, Pencil, and Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, as well as books about the Federal Reserve and how regulations protect business cronies. They'll learn about the harm caused by eminent domain, or regulations passed in the name of safety, and fundamental concepts of liberty. And as you can see from the sample pages on the website, they're all easy to read and nicely illustrated. They're just $9.99 a piece, or get a special discount as well as free bonuses when you purchase all 5. You can even buy in bulk to donate to schools and local libraries. So get the Tuttle Twins books at Bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins. And now it's time to accessorize this week's biggest Bogon emitter. And it's another for the New York Times for a whole brand new anti-AI lawsuit they have, this time against Amazon's Perplexity. Their first one was when they sued Microsoft and OpenAI over ChatGPT, using arguments that have been thrown out of several other cases, but this is the Southern District of New York and we know how they are, right? Now they're making exactly the same arguments. That Perplexity was unjustly enriched by the AI training which used their expressive, carefully written and researched and edited journalism without a license. And it's also the usual complaint about scraping, which, again, has always been found to be legal and not at all a copyright violation. In fact, the only complaint that survived similar cases is the accusation that AI companies downloaded books basically by piracy, notably the Books 3 archive we've covered, which includes a lot of ebooks not publicly available. But that doesn't apply here. All of the New York Times articles are available online. So it's fundamentally the old losing claim that AI training is merely derivative, not transformative. And they're not even claiming in this one that Perplexity can reproduce copyrighted articles, just that it can summarize them, which has never been a copyright violation. The big distinction with Perplexity versus the others is that it's not an LLM, it's an AI-based search engine. Information is scraped from the web page and used by the AI to determine how well it meets the user's search terms and then provides a summary of the page to the user. Perplexity said in a statement, "The law recognizes that no one organization owns the copyright over facts. This is what allows us to have a rich and open information ecosystem. Not to mention, it gives news organizations the ability to report on topics that were previously covered by another news outlet." Sarah Krebs, professor of government and law at Cornell University, said that this argument is very credible. Quote, "It's indexing web pages to provide factual answers, which is no different from what an AI-powered Google search does. If Perplexity is culpable, then the entire AI industry will be culpable as well. I do not see much difference between Perplexity's model and Google's AI-assisted search engine. If anything, they have even less of a case than they do with OpenAI." Quote, "Perplexity's approach is far more representative of how other AI platforms are operating than OpenAI's ChatGPT, which was far more intrusive and ambiguous in terms of compliance with copyright." Unless the point is just lawfare to threaten them with being tied up in an expensive lawsuit to get them to cave, I really don't see what hope the Times thinks they have. They just don't have a case. The only counts in other AI cases that have survived just don't apply here. But I guess if you're a dying legacy media site, desperate for subscriptions to keep going, and left with having to publish your very expressive interpretation of the facts, desperate to get people to pay through your paywall to see them, what choice do you have? After all, if they're already in possession of the facts, they might realize they can't rely on you to begin with. So all of that makes the New York Times this week's biggest Bogon emitter. I want to tell you about the eyeglasses I've been wearing for years. As people can see on my videos, I have a very strong prescription, which makes glasses more expensive, especially when I need computer glasses, reading glasses, prescription sunglasses, and most expensively, progressive lenses for general everyday wear. To save money while still getting quality glasses, I get them from Firmoo. In fact, I just got a pair of progressives with high-index aspherical lenses and a nice pair of frames my wife loves for just over $100. It would have been $500 to get them through my eye doctor. Not only do they look good, the glasses are durable. I've worn many pairs for several years without problems. All orders come with a 30-day return policy, a 3-month warranty, and one-on-one customer service. Go to Firmoo, that's FIRMOO.Bogosity.tv anytime you need quality glasses at a low price. Once again, that's Firmoo.Bogosity.tv. And now let's hyperballisticalize this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. And this week it goes to film director Alex Proyas, who directed the 2004 adaptation of Isaac Asimov's 1950 short story collection, I, Robot. Other films he's directed include Dark City and The Crow, so he's actually a pretty good director. Not slamming him on that front. On the 10th, Elon Musk and Tesla held a much-promoted event they dubbed We, Robot, a title playing off the Asimov book, where they showcased prototypes of a lot of their upcoming technology. This included a 2-seat cybercab with no pedals or steering wheel, several units of the upcoming humanoid robot Optimus, and an amazing-looking Robovan, spelled Robovan, but that's not how he pronounced it, an autonomous bus that seats about 20. So hurry up and bring your jukebox money! Sorry, I had to do it. Contractual obligation. You understand. It was primarily Optimus that Proyas had a problem with. Apparently, he's accusing Tesla of ripping off the designs in his films as if he owns the concept of humanoid robots or something. He tweet-X'd, "Hey Elon, can I have my designs back, please?" So, he thinks those designs are his? Apparently, so does his assistant, Matt Granger, who posted, "I too wish to offer my full-fingered fuck you to Elon and his utter lack of creativity." He at least has since deleted the post, but Proyas's is still up, and apparently he didn't even look at the pictures he himself posted. Aside from the humanoid form, they don't look much alike, with the movie robots having white heads and sculpted faces, and Optimus having blank black shiny ovals. That part actually more resembles the Rastan Warrior robot in Doctor Who. The bodies are a full-formed white-black two-tone, whereas in the movie, they're white panels with visible joints. I mean, I'm looking at the cover of the paperback I bought back in college, and the robot depicted on it looks a lot more like Optimus than his. He also posted comparisons implying that Cybercab and Robovan were taken from his designs. But whereas Robovan looks like a sleek Art Deco vehicle from a sci-fi utopia, with metallic gold and rows of horizontal lights around the center, the bus from iRobot looks like a big iron monster that'd be more at home in Terry Gilliam's Brazil. And aside from just an aerodynamic car design, I think maybe he's saying the Cybercab's forward-swinging butterfly doors were stolen from the rear-swinging scissor doors in the movie, even though they date back to the 1960s? By the way, the car in iRobot is actually an Audi RSQ, a concept car designed by Julian Hoenig. Audi designed it, not anyone from the movie. There's really nothing specifically linking these designs to the movie. In fact, I think I could make an equally good case that Tesla's designs were all stolen from designs in Fritz Lang's 1927 silent film Metropolis. Cue the collective knowledge of the internet pulling up designs that way predate Proyas, and not just in science fiction. The Mercury was an actual train in New York in 1936. Butterfly doors have been used on the BMW i8, the McLaren P1, the LaFerrari, and many others. They date back to the 60s too. You know, I don't remember the makers of Star Trek getting all bitchy when they came out with SD cards or the flip phone. Is Ridley Scott having a snit fit because we now have digital billboards like in Blade Runner? And I suppose Starship is totally ripped off from Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon. You have got to be kidding me! What is even motivating this? And why would such a noted director make himself such a mockery in this way? The only explanation that makes sense is that Alex Proyas is simply this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Well, that wraps up this. Trust me, it's this or go into your room and design a new kind of screwdriver edition of the Bogosity podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please go to donate.bogosity.tv for several ways to support and discord.bogosity.tv to join the discussion. Subscribe at the Discord or at Patreon or Subscribestar, and you can listen early and ad-free. Thank you for listening. Until next time, here's a quote from Buckminster Fuller. You never change anything by fighting the existing. To change something, build a new model and make the existing obsolete. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License.
Bogosity.